Hello and welcome. I'm here with more Anxioneers today, and we are going to talk about how to protect your anxiety, the hardworking emotion that it is, from overwhelm. And joining me are, to my left, right, Jeanette Brynn from Seattle, who's a licensed dynamic emotional integration trainer and consultant. And then below her on my screen is Sandi Davis from Sonoma County, California, the right county. Uh, and Sandi is also a licensed dynamic emotional integration trainer and consultant. And then next to Sandi on my screen is Jeanette, who is also a licensed dynamic emotional integration trainer and consultant, and she teaches on Empathy Academy in the licensing courses. And Sandi also teaches at Empathy Academy, and she has a wonderful course called Empathy and Selfcare. And so we've got the big guns. We brought the big guns in, and then Jeanette has also worked in the licensing courses as a teaching apprentice, and so we got everybody here. And what I wanted to say first is, anxiety should bring you a certain amount of energy because its job is to look toward the future and help you get ready and arrive in the future properly resourced with all your stuff, getting your stuff done and hitting your deadlines, right? So anxiety is not, in many cases, a laying down on the couch emotion. It's more of a let's go emotion. But in that, can be very easy to kind of tip over the edge and get into a, what would you call it, like an increased anxiety cycle. And then I just wanted to sort of open this up, and we can raise our hands. But what do you do when it's important that your anxiety is on task, but to keep it from going over the top and to keep yourself, like being able to sleep, being able to function when there's a lot going on? What do you do to protect yourself in your anxiety? Sandi?
Well, there's a few things I do, but when things start really there's start spinning, I make myself a short little list on a Post-it note because I can't put too much on a Post-it note, and it also relaxes my mind because I don't have to keep everything in my head about what I should be doing.
Yeah.
And so it's just really simple, it's focused, and I noticed that just having it written down helps calm me a bit. Mm-hmm. And whether I get everything on the list done or not kind of becomes less important, because I know that that's where I need to keep my attention. And yeah. And sometimes, like, what gets on the list are the big things, like, oh, I have this project that I need to get to this point on. And sometimes it's very simple, like, I have to return that phone call, or I have to send that email. It's like it's all fair game for the list. I don't distinguish between what's the important thing and what's the not important thing, because my anxiety has everything be important. So it all gets a place. It just needs to be, a manageable amount.
Yeah, list making is so important, and a lot of people kind of just whatever. Like, I don't need to make a list right now, but I've found that when I think of something, I do need to write it down, because especially since the pandemic hit, my business is strangely much more busy than it was before. So yay. But I'll think in the way that it used to be, that I'll remember that. And no, I am not remembering things. There's too much coming at me at once. So I've become, write it down, put it on the calendar, right? So that I can keep on top of all of it. And I do find that it helps my anxiety go, okay, she's got, I'm not alone remembering this. It's on a piece of paper. Now, Jeanette, you were talking about that your list making sort of got out of hand. That you can go too far. You can do overwhelm with list making.
Yes, it's a Post-it conundrum of because my anxiety really wants to do everything and then some. So I'm just reminded listening to Sandi though that how I will do that list at times. I'll just do the full-on list and then I'll create another list. And I have begun to start to ask, okay, what really needs to get done today? And then refine that list. So, and take myself off the hook and mediate with my anxiety that we may not get all that done, because there tends to still be that overriding sense of, so my anxieties worked very hard for me for a long time to overload, that it wants to really get in there and get it all done. And then it makes it very hard to function when you've got that kind of expectation on yourself and your anxiety. So.
Yeah. Our friend Francine from cohort 1 was having a tremendous anxiety and insomnia. And she found that she needed to keep a book by her bed. And when she would be woken up in the middle of the night by her insomnia and her anxiety, she would write it down. And eventually she was able to train herself to sleep through the night. And she began to do the list making before she went to bed. So she sort of did a download and then she could sleep through the night. But it took training, right? Because anxiety it's almost like a train. When you get on the anxiety train, it's just going down the track. And there's a lot of things you have to do to sort of, help it, like, figure out what it is. And it changes. I think that's the thing, is it changes. Jen, what have you noticed since you've got a new job and you work at Empathy Academy? And so there's a lot of juggling happening. How have you been protecting your anxiety?
Yeah, in the past, before the pandemic hit, my anxiety really doesn't like to be boxed up, so it doesn't like little post-it notes per day. It likes one long list for the week, and then depending on what's happening each day, I can pick and choose which ones I'm doing. And so I also didn't necessarily love having a regular schedule before the pandemic, but now I need it. I set my hours ahead of time and I'm just like, that's what I'm doing. This is when I'm doing this. Otherwise, my anxiety would probably be overruled a bit by apathy and depression. So yeah, I really am working hard to actually even bring in a little bit more anxiety to help me to get things done, the things done that I want to get done right now. So that's kind of new, because anxiety was always, everyone called it negative and you don't want anxiety and it's a bad thing.
Yeah, I find it really helps me, especially if I'm going through a period of depression, which a lot of people are right now. There's a lot of depressing things happening, and so it's normal. But after a while, you've been depressed for hours or days, and you say, I've got to get up, I've got to go for a walk, I've got to do something. And sometimes it can help to say, anxiety, please help me, just light a fire up in here, because otherwise I'm just going to sleep through this entire thing. We were also talking, what I'm interested in is the 4 of us having studied the same things and being Anxioneers and working on this book together, but we have 4 different ways of dealing with anxiety. And that's what's so important to understand, is you and your emotions have your own relationships. Something that we were talking about before we turned on the recording was Jeanette talked about anger, which is the emotion that helps you set boundaries around what you value. And I know a lot of people use anger in a very different way than that, but really that's what anger is. And Jeanette, you were talking about setting boundaries for your anxiety with your anger. Yeah.
Yeah. Beginning to really recognize how my anxieties trying to serve and set boundaries, oddly, do a lot of work for anger. And when I notice that and my anger starts to come up, I'm recognizing that the nuances of when I start to get that sizzle of irritation or annoyance or whatever that is, I can check what's of value, and my anxiety wants to run way out. So I will start to bring in my boundary to where it's, okay, we're here with me, and I can begin to see what's mine and what's the other person, and start to create better boundaries. So my anxiety I can work better with my anxiety.
Yeah, you can take appropriate action rather than all the actions.
all the actions, which then doesn't make somebody who really cares about how I treat others not a very nice person at times. And it can spin out because it's this intensity that can really get charged up very quickly. So just, it's a daily day in and day out kind of exercise of starting to recognize that these emotions are here to help me and be with me, and I get to cultivate being more of a kind mediator with them, and also the situations that are in front of me.
Yeah. I want to ask a question, and it's going to be our final question for each of us, but during the pandemic, I'm noticing that people are having more difficulty with their anxiety because of uncertainty. And here in the United States, we have had to close down again because we opened up too early. So people's anxiety was not setting good boundaries. People were like, I got to get out to the beach. Well, no, I got to go to parties. Nope. So how have you been working with your anxiety in relation to uncertainty? Which, if anxiety is about the future, we cannot plan for the future at this point. We can hope, but we can't plan even 2 weeks ahead. We don't know. For me, it's been, maybe I'm using my anger, I'm not sure, but I'm bringing my anxiety closer, and I'm looking at what I can do in the next 2 days, right? And maybe I'll think out a week ahead of time, right? How much food do I need? That sort of thing. What have you been doing to manage the uncertainty? What have you and your anxiety been doing? Anything different than that, Sandi?
Well, well, one thing I realized is that I needed to kind of reevaluate my relationship with anxiety, because it has a slightly different function, or dramatically different function for me now than what it did before the pandemic really hit here. So that was a big thing. It's like, oh, I can no longer, it doesn't work to try and make long-term plans. So I have, definitely been doing that, bringing planning in closer, and remembering that anxiety is an action-oriented emotion. So really looking for the action, even the tiniest action. It's like remembering that the small actions add up over time. And so that's been really helpful, because I haven't been able to take the kind of actions that I might want to take. And so not discounting what I can do has been really, really helpful. Also really inviting in contentment where I can. Like, yay, I got 3 of those 5 things attended to today. It's like, I can't plan long-term, but I did do this. It's like, it's kind of this weird place where the world has gotten very big and also very, very tiny at the same time. Because we're seeing how interconnected everything is, and how one thing over here does dramatically impact something over there. So it's become very, like, overwhelmingly large and interconnected. And then also, it's just me and my husband in our house, So it's become very, very immediate. So taking actions, however small, and remembering to get outside of my house and breathe real air, fresh air, I should say.
It's real.
It's still real
it's
inside my house, but it's just fresher outside. And taking that, like having that, like many days that needs to be on my list, or I forget to do it now. Because there isn't so much of a delineation between days or weeks, or weekends and weekdays. Remembering and putting in, like, this needs to happen. It's like, go outside and pull a few weeds, and making my smaller world more familiar and cozy, actually.
Yeah.
I think my strategy is similar, but worded a little bit differently in my head. Because once I remember when we started locking things down, I'm in Canada, and so we started locking things down in really early March. And I remember people talking about the next 2 weeks, and it was implied that this would only take 2 weeks. And I knew better. So at that point, I just said to my anxiety, hey, guess what? You don't have to make long-term plans anymore because we don't know. We can't do it. So you get a break. So we get to just focus on today or maybe even the week. And then we're good. So yeah, I think in a way it was almost like relaxing at the same time when everything's heightened, but it was nice to have my anxiety just be like, oh, I get a break from this, sweet. But I mean, that's not to say that my anxiety is totally not at a very intense level at times, because it is, and I think it needs to be. So the other thing I do is I try to learn as much as I can from reputable sources about what's happening, and be really careful about how much time I spend learning about what's happening, because you can just spend too much time on it. So you have to have boundaries, I guess it would be. Just to kind of know okay, I've got this information now, I can walk away, and I know how to keep myself as safe as possible and go from there.
Yeah. And I was realizing as you said that I think the four of us are fortunate enough to be able to work from home to a certain extent. But that there are people who have to be out there working. And for me, part of my anxiety preparation when I go out is to make sure that I have my infection control like right on, because I'm going to go into places where people don't have a choice. They don't have a choice about being in the store or, being where they are. And so that's another thing, is like mask, gloves, hand sanitizer. How long am I going to be in a place? Do I need my N95 or can I wear different masks? It's like I've got all these things now, things you would never have thought of before. And now we're becoming experts at them. And Jeanette, what are you doing for your anxiety? Oops, we lost Sandi. We'll say hello to her.
Well, I have the responsibility of helping my mother right now, who's 96. So this has set a whole different stage. I would rather be with my anxiety at home, cultivating an online presence. But the thing that I have been buttoning down on harder than I've ever done is my self-care. I've got the list of dubious actions versus what is the list?
Healing actions.
Healing
it's from
actions.
the book, yeah.
Yeah, as opposed to dubious actions. And I've been having that as a reminder, and doing my absolute best to get more rest. The hands-on, grounding. I literally, I'll do like a shower. I mean, it's not just like to bring me back to my body, because there's so much uncertainty. Yeah. And the same thing of, I'm also a hairdresser, so on my other short time, so there's this whole other set of how do I care for self and other. My anxiety wants to just take care of it all. So like you were saying, getting all the little packets set up and just having things lined up so that you're taking care of yourself and others around you best you can. And self-care more than ever, going to bed instead of watching Netflix for me all night, and things like that, just to calm that down.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And thanks to Jeanette and Jennifer and Sandi, the ghost who came back. It's like, this is Zoom. This is real life. This is what people are dealing with. So I'm glad this happened. And I hope your anxiety is okay with it.
There was a moment of panic because I got dropped and I couldn't find my way back in. And then anxiety was like, what needs to happen now? Need to start from the beginning. And here I am.
Oh, well, thanks to all three of you for being here and talking about anxiety. I think there couldn't be a better time for an anxiety book, but I think you could always say that. It just keeps being a good time for an anxiety book. Thank you for your work as Anxioneers, and thank you for helping make a place for this beautiful emotion that people have been taught to distrust and not love. So thank you for helping us embrace anxiety. Thank you.
Thank you.